Well, good evening and welcome everybody to our community meeting. We have quite a night set up, so we are going to start by having our staff introduce themselves. So my name is Ken Thomas, the police chief.
Hello, Rafael Padilla. I'm the Assistant Chief over Investigations.
And my name is Eric Hemmen. I'm the Support Services Assistant Chief.
Commander Matt Holmes with Patrol, and I work the Panther Lake area is my designated area.
Commander Todd Durham. I'm the King 3 Commander and work day shift.
Hi, I'm Mike O'Reilly. I'm the Special Investigations Commander.
Hi, Commander John Thompson. I work the King 2 area, which is southeast East Hill of the Kent.
Officer Jen Prusa, Neighborhood Response Team Officer assigned to the West Hill.
Hi, I'm Dave Gaderi, and I'm part of the Neighborhood Response Team, and I'm assigned to the Valley.
Officer Ian Warmington, Neighborhood Response Team, and I'm going to be covering the King 4, which is the Northeast Hill, and also the King 2, Southeast Hill.
Hi, I'm Sarah Wood. I'm the Research and Development Analyst with the Police Department.
And I'm John Pagel. I'm the Community Education Coordinator. I cover the downtown and West Hill.
I'm Jaylene King, and I'm the Administrative Assistant to the Chief.
Great, and we all welcome those of you that could make it. And before I get started, there's a few other people that I would like to recognize. First, several of our council members are here. Brenda Fincher, thank you for being here. I saw Dana Ralph. Dana, hi Dana, and Jim Barrios. Jim, there you are. So thank you, council members, for all of your support. And so I'm going to talk a lot about the police department tonight when it's my turn. And I'm really proud of the work that our staff is doing, our police department staff. One other person I want to recognize, Israel Vila from the Kent School District. We have done a couple of projects lately, and we probably won't be able to speak to them tonight, but the support that the police department and the relationship that we have with the Kent School District is really incredible with Dr. Watts, and has been a great person for us to work with. So thank you for being here. So a little bit tonight, we're going to talk about our sectors. The commanders are going to talk about the most prominent crime issues in their sectors. So you'll hear about that, what's going on. I can tell you property crime is up. And it's concerning, but the biggest reason why it's up is the opioid epidemic. You may have heard about the problems with heroin and opioids. It is skyrocketing, and so that's a big issue that we are dealing with. And you may hear more about that tonight. Then Assistant Chief Padilla is going to talk about a drone program. Our police department is going to start a drone program, but it's a very limited program in the sense in what we're going to use that drone for. And Assistant Chief Padilla is going to go through that process and talk to you about what the drone really is and when it's appropriate to use. And he'll, I believe, talk about some of our policies and restrictions on that. And then I will come up and talk a little bit more about what we've heard. So there's been a community meeting, the last one in July. We've done a focus group, actually several focus groups, and asking and listening to what the community wants to see in their police department. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that we have heard from the community and some of the things that we are doing to try to address that and move forward from that information that we've gathered. So there's one thing to listen and hear, and then the what now is kind of where we're at and what we're going to do. Then Assistant Chief Padilla is going to facilitate some question and answers, and then we'll break out and you'll be able to meet with your commander and or NRT officer in your part of the city, and that'll wrap us up for tonight. So are we starting with you, Commander Holmes? Okay.
Okay, anybody from the Panther Lake area? Okay. One of the things that for the last month, the residential burglaries are about the same, which is good news. Part of the reason for that is when school starts, we have a lot of houses that don't have anybody in their house during the school days, and so sometimes the burglaries go up a little bit. Where in the summer, there's somebody home, so the burglaries aren't quite as frequent. A good story on a burglary that we did have, some people were having their house remodeled. It got broken into. Luckily, a gentleman that lived across the street saw someone acting suspicious and took some pictures of this guy. He was digging through their recycle bin, and he knew that he shouldn't be there. When the homeowners came home, they found that they had been broken into. While the police were there, the neighbor came over to see what was going on. He says, "Hey, I saw a suspicious guy earlier, and I got pictures of him." Another neighbor had surveillance out in front by his garage, which also showed the suspect. The good news is the suspect left his cell phone at the crime scene. Sometimes it takes the police, the community, and the bad guy to help solve a crime. So we were able to identify who he was, show pictures to the people that saw him, and so we were able to charge him that way. The other thing that's probably going to go up in the winter is the vehicle thefts. And the reason for that is some people will warm their car up and leave it unattended. So just a reminder, no matter where you live, it's not just Panther Lake that gets cold, make sure you don't just leave it unattended while you're heating up your car in the mornings. Okay? Thank you.
Hi there again. My name's Todd Durham. I'm the Sector 3 Commander. I'm going to talk about probably the biggest, or one of the biggest problems we have here on the West Hill has been auto theft over probably the last couple years. I am happy to say that the last 4 weeks, there's been a 41% reduction in that, so that things are looking better that way. A lot of that's probably due to a new auto theft initiative, which they've started with the neighborhood response team and our detective unit. They've worked hard on that. They've increased some bail amounts. They've identified some of the problems, subjects in the city, some of the guys that steal a lot of cars. And by doing that, they've also done some things, I guess, working with other places to hold these guys. So when we go ahead and we get them in jail, we hold them there, we put them through a trial process fairly quickly, and then we ship them out of the area if we can. So they're no longer in the area, at least while they're incarcerated. I believe we're sending them over to Yakima in that jail. They'll serve their time over there, and then when they get done, they'll have the ability to come back. But it is getting them out of the area, they're out of their comfort zone, and they're out of the area of their families. And so we're really trying to impact auto theft that way, and it seems to be working, and hopefully they're not affecting people, at least of the West Hill, but also the city. One of the other problems that we have, and this is more of a quality of life issue for you guys. Everybody lives in a neighborhood where you've probably had one of these problem houses, maybe something that's been repossessed, or it's a rental, that type of thing. Well, recently we had one at our King 3 officer, Bruce, has been working on this probably for the last 8 months to a year with their code enforcement. The owner of the house died, the bank repossessed the house. Well, during that time, transients moved in, some squatters moved in, and they kind of end up taking it over. Well, the good neighbors call in, they're trying to keep their neighborhood nice. So code enforcement gets involved, neighborhood response team gets involved, we end up contacting the banks, trying to work with the bank to end up selling this house. Eventually it's going to get sold at auction. So, and the bank was cooperative once they learned of the problem. So I would encourage you, if you have some of these in your city, in our city, in your neighborhood, I'm sorry, give us a call and we might be able to help you. Sometimes we can help kind of guide you through those processes. Sometimes maybe not, but we can at least give it a shot and help improve the quality of life in your neighborhood. So that'll be all I have, and I'm going to pass it over to Commander Thompson.
Where is Sector 3?
Right here.
Where is it?
What, the West Hill? Almost the entire West Hill.
Okay.
And again, I'm Commander Thompson. I work the King 2 district, which is basically the south portion of the East Hill of Kent, 240th Street on the north, 104th Avenue on the west, down to the city limits on that side. That's the area I'm in charge of. We've already talked about vehicle thefts, vehicle crimes. In the King 2 in my sector, thefts are up a little bit, prowls are down. There's a multitude of reasons for that. Commander Durham and Commander Holmes already talked about that, so I don't want to belabor that point. We're doing a lot of good work with that initiative that they spoke of. I do want to talk about a success story we had in my district with a problem area where some patrol officers, not my level, not NRTs, some regular everyday patrol officers recognized an issue at a commercial property where folks were calling 911 on average 2 or 3 times a day, every day, about drug use, alcohol use, folks walking through their property, destroying things, leaving, let's just say, trash in the commercial area. And one of our patrol officers came up with a very detailed, comprehensive plan to attack this problem. We devoted some resources to this issue, and over the last month, we have had one 911 call from this property in the surrounding area. So I love to brag about the work our officers do. That's a great example of it. We met with the property owner today, and the statement she made to me was just fantastic. She said, my staff actually feels safe coming back to work now. Before their folks, they were scared about confronting folks. They didn't want to deal with the folks they had out in their parking lots, sleeping in their alleys, that sort of thing. Now we've built that relationship with them where we've told them, call 911 about any issue you may have. We can answer questions, we can respond out there, but that's an example of the work we're doing pretty much on a daily basis. And I want to say thank you to our patrol officers. Chief Padilla, I think you're next. Who here is from the King 2 and that South Hill, East Hill? Okay.
All right, thank you. While we get set up, we want to give one more call for anybody that might have questions. We're going to pass out. If you want to ask a question or write it down so we can answer it specifically, raise your hand. We'll get you a question card, and we'll get to those after the presentation. We're going to initiate a drone program. We call it the Unmanned Aerial System is the fancy name for it. We're trying to stay away from the drone word, but UAS for short. In our efforts to be a progressive police department, we look at technology all the time and ways in which it can enhance our ability to deliver service to the community. And so we've looked at this pretty hard. We've got a lot of research into it, and we're developing the policies that are almost complete. The attorney's not quite done with all of them yet, but that's coming. But I found, actually, Assistant Chief Hemmon turned me onto this video. It's normally 18 minutes down, but we shrunk it down for the presentation to give you a good visual of why it is we think it's an important technology for us to have.
Some law enforcement agencies are looking to the skies and determining that unmanned aircraft systems, UAS, offer solutions to maintaining public safety and processing crime scenes. Standing up a UAS program takes research, planning, and training. Under the right circumstances, the technology can produce great results. The Mesa County Sheriff's Office in Grand Junction, Colorado, uses UASs primarily to assist in crime scene and traffic accident investigations. Ben Miller, Unmanned Aircraft Program Director, says the aircraft's cameras record information and help officers process it. His fixed-wing aircraft and quadcopter are more than cameras. With the help of computer apps that come with the aircraft and the addition of readily available apps like Google Maps, these vehicles provide precise measurements that help officers visually present special information to investigators and prosecutors. Photographing a crime or accident scene with standard equipment on the ground can take hours or even days. A UAS can fly over the same scene and take digital images in 20 to 40 minutes. When Miller is called to a scene, he says the nature of the investigation dictates which aircraft he'll fly. Fixed-wing aircraft require greater launching distance and may require an assisted launch setup, like a bungee cord or catapult. Quad helicopters can take off in smaller spaces. Once Miller selects the appropriate aircraft, here's how he proceeds.
in a nutshell, what it looks like when we show onto a scene. We're basically going to make the notifications that our FAA approval requires us to do. We usually do that en route on the phone. We show up on a scene, we'll tie in with whatever management is there. They'll kind of give us a brief of this is what we've got. We'll assess the area that we'd like to fly. We'll check it for obstructions, whether that's trees, buildings, antennas, stuff like that. We'll develop where we're going to fly, and we're going to make sure that it's safe to do so, etc. We'll pull the vehicle out. We'll do the quick assembly that is required, load the batteries, etc., and a quick pre-flight. Then we take the vehicle off. It goes what we call downrange, flies the mission.
Miller plugs in coordinates on a computer screen, and the aircraft takes off and enters that predetermined perimeter or box. It flies from the nearest point within the box to the farthest point, and then methodically flies back and forth in a pattern photographing everything on the ground. Back at the office, the images are stitched together and three-dimensional images are created. Miller set up a demonstration outlining the use of his quadcopter at a traffic accident scene. Using his software and Google Maps, he selects his Add Point tool, adds 4 points over the intersection. These points form a box delineating the photo survey area. He adjusts the box to eliminate obstructions and to fly at a safe distance away from buildings. Now the software tells him his survey area. In this case, it's a ½ acre. It tells him it'll take 1 minute and 49 seconds to fly the mission. Now he activates his quadcopter, and it goes to its designated entry point. The aircraft methodically flies back and forth, taking photos of the entire box. Using GPS and other sensors on board, it makes sure the photography has perfect overlap. After recording for approximately a minute and a half, the quad returns to its takeoff location and lands. Miller says using unmanned aircraft to collect data in a scenario like this has at least 2 advantages over doing things strictly on the ground. It is a quick and accurate way to process the accident scene, and the scene is cleared and traffic can resume faster. So, both the sheriff's office and the public are well served.
All right, so that's kind of the overview of what we're looking at and some of the specifications for what we're getting. That isn't the exact model, but ours will look very similar to that model that you see there. The reality is you could go to Fry's and Renton right now or any other electronics store and get one of the quadcopters for about $700 is what we're looking at. So they're out in the market and they're everywhere, which is beneficial. We are going to get 2 units. One will be HD video, and one's going to be HD still digital camera for different applications. We will be able to do remote. We're a pilot trained in our department will be able to control it manually, and we'll also have pre-programmed flights primarily for our traffic collisions. We do have limited time in the air. The batteries only allow for about 20 to 30 minutes in the air before they come down and be changed out, so there's that. And in terms of costs, the hardware that you're looking at there with the cameras is about $1,500 per unit. And then what's really expensive, what really takes the price up is the software. It's about $12,000 for the photogrammetry software that does the 3D imaging, puts everything together. It's pretty phenomenal. We could photograph the outside with the drone, have it come inside and photograph the inside, and it will put together a 3D video virtual flight, and you can watch as if you were actually in here. Where that really comes into play is for our major crimes, particularly like with a homicide, and we're having a court and we're trying to paint the picture for the jury as to what happened and where things were. It's exact to the inch. It tells you where it was and how it was, and it's quick, as they mentioned. So, and I didn't mention, so total cost, training, equipment, and everything is going to be about $37,000. So what are we going to use it for specifically? Traffic collisions and crime scene investigations is probably going to represent about 85% of our use. You saw that quadcopter cleared an area of 1.5 acres in a couple of minutes. If we had to do that today, we're talking 3 or 4 days. That's how useful this technology is going to be for us. So crime scene and traffic collision primarily, disaster overview. You can see that picture there. It says, please help us. If you guys remember, that was Katrina. And they had to use helicopters to go out and find out where people were stranded on their roofs. That's the type of technology, if we had a flood or earthquake, we could deploy here and help find people. Tactical operations. So helping our SWAT team out or any type of call for patrol where they're going to be exposed to, say, someone with a gun that might have an elevated position on them or get exposed to some type of risk. This can take care of that for us and be our eyes. Coincidentally, we had an incident today on our East Hill. Right about the time school was letting out, one of our apartments in there, we had a gentleman who we were contacting for a DV assault, domestic violence assault, at his apartment, and he ended up barricading himself in the bathroom. When the officers went there, he had a butcher knife. So the officers got the victim out, started dealing and negotiating with him. That went on for a while. During this time, he escaped out a window in the bathroom and got on the roof of the apartment complex. So now we have a suspect. We had reason to believe he was armed with a weapon. We knew about the knife for sure. We were told that he might have had a gun, and he was wanted for at least 3 felonies, including the assault on the female. He gets up on the building, may have a gun. That puts our officers on containment at severe risk. Now, we brought in the fire department, helped us out. As I wasn't there, so I have this secondhand, so help me out if I'm getting the facts wrong here. But this was just today. Firefighter brought in their ladder trucks, and we were able to start getting up on the roof, but he foiled some of those attempts. But if you can imagine officers climbing up on a ladder to go get a guy on the rooftop, I don't think there's any safe way that can be done. It would have been nice to have one of these drones and have real-time video and just watch them while we continue the negotiation so we could see, as long as he's not hurting himself or others, that buys us time. When we can't see him, we can't see if he's pointing a gun at anybody. Those unknowns cause problems for us. So there's an example just today where we probably could use this technology. So tactical operations will be there, and then, like I said, any other public or officer safety issues going on. Well, go ahead.
$37,000 a copy?
For both units, training, and all certifications. We'll get to some of the requirements. So what we're not going to use the UAS for, it will not be used for random surveillance, right? That's a no-no. We won't be targeting anybody based on their appearance. None of the things that we're prohibited from doing now, that's not going to start occurring because we have a UAS. We're not going to go into areas where there's an expectation of privacy, okay, without exigent circumstances or a warrant issued by a judge. So example of exigent circumstance, someone's in a house actively trying to kill somebody would be an example of exigent circumstances, right? Or we've had a barricaded subject with a gun. We need to clear some of the house and see what's in there before we actually physically go in. We could send the drone in for that. That would be an exigent circumstance. Okay. So what are the safeguards for that? It's pretty simple. We've got laws on right now that regulate this. The Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution prohibits unreasonable search and seizure. That's not going away. We have state laws. Article 1, Section 7 of the Washington State Constitution restricts our ability to intrude in your privacy in any way without lawful purpose, usually signed by a judge. The Federal Aviation, FAA, they heavily regulate this. There's all kinds of paperwork and certifications and processes and inspections that have to be completed before we can fly. We have written our department policy, which is in line with all the laws and adds further restrictions on the use. An officer cannot, even a trained officer that's one of our pilots, cannot just grab the UAS and go use it. A supervisor has to authorize it for collision scenes, and for any other application, a commander has to give the authority before the officers can deploy it. So we have lots of checks and balances. The other thing that we added is that a commander is going to be assigned as the program coordinator, and that person's job will be to review every deployment on every mission that we fly. The pilots will be required to, it's just like flying a plane, flight logs telling us when, where, and how it was used, and that person will work through any issues, training needs, equipment needs, and that type of thing. I think we missed a sign, but so who are we going to select? We're probably going to put together a cadre that's going to be on call. It'll be a combination of our detectives, one member of our SWAT team, and a couple members of our traffic unit, because they'll be using it the most. Okay? Like I said, we're going to require extensive training, and it's not required that they get FAA certification, but Chief Thomas has made it a requirement that we get there. So we're going to do that. go. Benefits, kind of talked about these a little bit. How many in this room been stuck behind a fatality collision or a bad wreck on the road and can't get where you're going? So I was the traffic sergeant for years, and when we got called out for those, particularly if it was a fatality, we were going to be blocking that road for a minimum of 5 hours, okay, because it took that long with the technology we have right now to go ahead and clear that out. With these drones, Renton has been using their drones now for a few months, and their traffic guys are telling us they get on scene and they're done in half an hour and they're out of there. And they have all the imagery, all the evidence that they would normally collect. It's all the same, just done a lot quicker. So there's the benefit to the community that way. We talked about the search and rescue, and because we're on scene for a shorter amount of time, that's a huge cost saving to the taxpayer. When we get called out in the middle of the night and officers have to come out on overtime, those expenses start adding up. This program is going to pay for itself rather quickly just in the overtime savings alone. Benefits to us, the reduced exposure to danger, better situational awareness for situations like people on a roof with a gun, and then more accurate and efficient investigations. So when are we going to do this? We're looking at first quarter of next year. We still have to go through the procurement process, certification, authorization, training, the pilots, the whole deal, and then finally implementation sometime first quarter. So that's all we've got on this. Questions on our program? Yes, sir.
The software, that's kind of a technical question, but the software you mentioned the cost, is that a package that the software is in a base unit that flies?
Actually, it's on the laptops.
It's on the laptop?
Yeah, and it works in correspondence with the software on the actual hardware.
So that one bit of software can interface with both?
Yes, yes. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
Once the batteries last longer than 20 or 30 minutes, could this possibly replace the helicopters that they're trying to get rid of anyway?
If we were to, the technology exists for that currently, but it's cost, 5 or 6 fold to get that type of technology. There are UAS systems that can stay in the air for a while and can do almost everything that a helicopter can do right now.
And that would cost more than a helicopter?
We would be talking well over hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, yes, sir.
What's the ability for the drones to operate at night for accident and event, investigation or during, bad weather like snow or fog or things like that? Do they have problems? Or?
They do. Excellent question. Excellent question. So nighttime isn't an issue if we get the low light cameras, which is part of what we're purchasing. So that's taking care of that. Heavy rain and wind is a problem. So the pilots will be trained to judge for that. And what we've been doing, or what I should say, what Renton's been doing is when the weather's bad, they wait for a break and they come out and deploy the drone then. As far as, like I said, nighttime's not that big a deal. And the software that comes with the UAS self-regulates. There's collision avoidance technology on it that keeps it from hitting power lines and things of that nature. The pilots have to do a real good survey and inspection of where they're going to fly before they launch. So there's safeguards there. Yes, ma'am.
Just a wondering, I've seen in this neighborhood where you guys have looked for people. I mean, would you do this?
No. Unless it was someone who was an immediate deadly threat to the community, we're not using this to go and search after and chase down bad guys. No. And let me add one more caveat. Unless we get a judge to sign a warrant that allows us to do something of that nature. Yes, ma'am.
He answered my first question, or you answered his question that I had. Anyways, my second question was how you talked about indestructible or the technology to avoid power lines, that if somebody were to shoot it out of the sky or it were to just crash and burn, would the hard drive be protected so the crime evidence is still saved?
Right. Great question. The drone units we're looking at are actually pretty durable and can take a pretty good hit. But in the event that they're damaged, What's nice is the replacement former is about $700, which isn't cheap. I mean, that's money, but we're not looking at a whole replacement at $37,000 for it. Whether we can retain the evidence that's on there depends on how bad it's damaged.
Are you, I'm hoping that the budget would allow you to drive in and crash them. Is that allowed? I mean, just like worst case scenario, collect some evidence and then see how it works. Because there would be, I don't know, I think the budget should be approved for something like that for testing. Because then
Right.
if you're on a real crime scene and this is your one and only tool to get that evidence that something happens and it's not there, then in the court, like that would be detrimental to the.
Right. And unfortunately, we're not pioneering this technology, and including the agency that you saw in the video has done. So this has been around for a while. We've been able to learn from their research and their trial and errors, even from local agencies around us. So we feel pretty confident with the product we have.
The other agencies throughout the nation, that they are use more military style as opposed to just what the department can afford.
For law enforcement, it's been pretty much the quad copper style. There are some fixed wing units. None of them are military in terms of none of them are armed that I know of. And it's merely overwhelmingly used for crime scene mapping. So, good. Want to bring the chief up for his part of the presentation. Any other questions before I move on? Yes, sir.
I just wanted to make two comments from the perspective of the school district today. The East Hill incident that just wanted to make a couple statements, comments. The incident that was mentioned today in East Hill, we were working very closely with Kent Police. I wanted to thank you for the continued collaboration. And the other piece was on the safety side, that's one of my areas of responsibility. When that gentleman went to the rooftop, we had to stop buses because we also don't know what the danger is to our kids. And so it would have helped us greatly to determine whether it was safe for us to drop kids off and get them home. There were a lot of other things. So I was on the side listening and wanted to thank you for that. And this is exactly in my mind what I was thinking. To be able to have eyes in the sky would have been great for our community.
Well, thank you. Those of you that think of questions, we're going to get to the rest of them here at question and answers, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to the chief.
Thanks, Ryan. Okay, now I'm going to spend a few minutes to talk about a project or a topic or an issue that is really important to me and I'm really excited about for our community. And that I've kind of titled this, The Conversation Continues. Many of you were at the meeting in July where we had over 200 people, and we talked about, it was more of a listening session of the police department. We wanted to listen to what was on the mind of our community, the residents in our community, hear what had to be said, and then and move forward from there. Really with the hope of building trust, building relationships between the police department and the community. So in conjunction with that meeting, we also, and I think I spoke about this at that time, conducted a focus group project. And a couple people here were very instrumental in that project. One is Sarah Wood in the back, and the other is John Pagel. Where'd John go? John and Sarah and Stacy Judd. For those of you that know Stacy, the three of them teamed up and worked on a project that I am just extremely excited about. And I read the first draft, and it was incredible. These guys did an outstanding job, and I can't wait to post it on our website and get the information out. And it'll be soon, a couple of weeks or so. I just say that because I saw the look on Sarah's face. It's just an incredible job, but we want to make sure that that it gets out there and it's right, and it's as good as it possibly can be. So tonight, as part of that conversation continues, I want to talk a little bit about what we heard at the last meeting, and then the main themes that we gathered from the focus group project. And then we can talk about what we're doing to move forward and how we're addressing that issue. So a couple of the main themes, and some of you may have seen this on our website or Facebook page, but from that July 21st meeting, the number one issue or theme that was written down is police and community members need to know and engage each other better. This would make a big difference in police-community relationships. Now think about that, because you're going to hear that theme again coming up. And a few examples, police officers get out of their cars, interact more with the community. And I don't know if you remember, but a statement was made, remember the power of a smile. All right, the next big one. Several speakers talked about issues regarding homelessness. And we talked about that we have a police commander assigned to the homeless population that works directly with people who are homeless and directly with service providers and people that help people with the homeless. And then you may recall that since that time we've had 2 homicides involving the homeless, and tragic, difficult investigations. And we've had detectives assigned to that from the very beginning to, I was briefed on that investigation again this morning. We take that very seriously. It is a serious, significant crime in our community, and we are pouring every possible resource that we can to address those crimes and try to bring them to a successful conclusion and bring justice in those cases. We're not there yet, though, but we're still working it. Everyone should have more conversations. We find that we are not as different as people would make us believe. So again, the conversations, I've had additional conversations after this community meeting, the focus groups. I went up to the East Hill, the Phoenix Academy, and had a conversation with the GEM group, the Glover Empowerment Mentoring group, another little community meeting. And it's a big part of it, and a big start is having those open conversations. They're really important. And then finally, another big theme is the police and community liaisons is a really important factor that should be continued and is important for building trust. And I talked a little bit about the focus group. Now I want to go in, because this is more of a scientific, qualitative process that was undertaken by our staff. And I really think that this is going to be a model for policing throughout our country, let alone throughout our state and our region. And I think that's why I'm really excited about that. I think we're pioneers in this area. When the question was asked of 7,000 police chiefs in an International Association of Chiefs of Police conference, how many of you chiefs have asked your community what they think is a good police department and is important? And to my knowledge, I think we're the only ones that I'm aware of, and maybe the first ones, that have asked those questions. And I'm really excited about the product that's put together. So, Sarah, the team was led by Sarah and John and Stacy. They were all part of the team, but they did 13 different focus groups throughout the city. Interviewed over 100 people as part of these 13 different focus groups. That's a lot. And in fact, in the lessons learned section, we learned that that's too much, because we duplicated some of the groups. They came up with over 900 pages of transcribed text to try to pour through and gather information from. And what we learned that we didn't know until we did it was not a lot of the information changed. So for example, we did 3 different groups of students. Well, we got essentially the same themes from all, so we didn't get anything significantly different. We hit 2 different groups of businesses. We didn't get significantly different things from either group that we wouldn't have gotten from just one, for example. But I say that to say that's a lot. That's a lot of data, 900 pages of transcribed text, 13 different groups, over 100 people that represent many different areas of our community. We even went to the Kent jail and interviewed inmates. I got some raised eyebrows from my team that did it when I suggested that that might not be a bad idea. But we did it. They did it, and they did a wonderful job, and in fact, they gave very meaningful input because they're part of our community. Because they're not in jail the whole time, they're incarcerated, they made a mistake, they're paying their debt, and we should listen to them. Different diverse groups, different schools, different businesses, block watches, neighborhood groups, you name it. 13 different groups, so I'm very happy. So these themes that I'm going to talk about tonight are the most prevalent. So we used, I keep saying we, but we as the department, our team used some technical, we worked with technical experts from the Department of Justice and subject matter experts and software that help us analyze data and quantify it and put it all together. So I'm going to go through some of the main themes, and you should know that of the 13 groups, if the topic didn't make it, the theme that I'm calling them, didn't make it in at least 8 of the 13 groups, it's not listed here. So that's kind of our trigger. So there may be some things that, hey, wait a minute, I was in one of those groups and this wasn't, you didn't say this tonight, Chief. Well, I didn't say it tonight because it didn't make it in 8 of the 13 groups. And we have 2 pages worth of stuff that made it in 8 of the 13 groups, which makes it very common themes across the whole board. So I just wanted to really be clear on that piece. So let's talk about the number one thing that was brought up, the number one theme brought up by every single group. What did I say it was from the community meeting? Police and community members need to know and engage each other better. That would make a big difference in police-community relationships. The number one in every single one in the focus group. Community outreach and relationship building. This was overwhelmingly the most common mentioned theme with all of the focus groups. Interesting. Our employees do a lot to build relationships, but we are missing some of our population. Kent is a majority-minority community. We're not hitting all of our different cultures and groups in our community. That's good feedback. That's good for us to know. We need to focus on getting as many different groups as we can. Suggestion was made, over-communicate. Communicate, talk more, continue to talk as much as you can so more people will hear the message and understand what we're trying to say. And personify our staff. People want to get to know who our officers are, who our staff is, and know them as people, and know that the police are human also, and it's not an us versus them, but we're people and have families and kids and a lot of the same issues that everybody else in the community has, and we're groups that work together. So interesting that both groups, the number one topic. Okay, the next main theme, police presence and visibility. The public's feeling and perception of safety is linked to police presence. When people see the police, most people, they feel safe. Now, one subgroup, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah or John, is sometimes kids, younger kids, when they see more police, they don't get that sense that things are safe or they feel safer. They get the sense that maybe things aren't safe or that something's up. So that's the one little variation as part of that. But people wanted, the vast majority of people that were part of the focus group, and we did all ages, wanted to see more police, and they felt safer with more police presence. They encouraged officers to get out of their cars and interact. I think we've heard that before. Increase bike patrols and implement foot patrols were some big suggestions as part of that.
Did the prisoners recommend more police present? Said you went down to court.
We did go to the court. I don't know if they brought that up or not. No, Sarah, it was more of the youth groups. Yeah. Communication and connection. It was said repeatedly that communication improves perception of the department. While many said communication occurs, suggestion was we need to do more and even be better and in different ways. Specifically, follow-up communications about investigations. People want to know what's going on in the community. And, you know, we have, just as a side note on that communication, and people want to know what's going on, and building relationships. On Friday is our first installment of our wintertime Friday training that every one of our officers go through. It's a full day of training with different topics. Well, one of the topics that we're going to talk about that our training sergeant's going to discuss is the use of deadly force. And I was up there today, and as part of the deadly force discussion, I'm going to have a few minutes at the end and start talking with our staff about the fact that when we have an officer-involved shooting, unlike what has happened before, where the police generally don't say anything, and we just wait until the investigation reveals itself out, it's very likely that in the best interest of the police officers and in the best interest of the community, that I get out front and give as much information as I possibly can without compromising the investigation so people will understand and there will be a building of understanding. The example that comes from is one of the recent shootings that there was, I think it was South Carolina and North Carolina, where for 3 days, the national conversation was police shoot unarmed man who did not have a gun, only had a book. Well, it wasn't until 3 days later that the police chief or the police department came out and said, hey, wait a minute, there was no book. A book didn't exist. All there was a gun, and it was a stolen gun, and it had his fingerprints. It's incumbent that the truth and the story gets out before the days and days and days of misinformation. It's a benefit to everybody that the truth gets out. So I want our officers to know that I believe, as the police chief, it's in the best interest of the officers and the best interest of our community that the real truth gets out and not somebody's agenda that may or may not be the truth. So that communication and connection is something that we're going to look at. Community diversity, perception that the department's command staff, and you see a lot of command staff here, get and understand diversity, but maybe the line officers don't. Well, we have as many or more line officers and people here today as we do command staff. But that's a perception, and that's something that we will continue to work on. Officers should attend cultural and local events, not just command level staff. I can tell you that happens, but we maybe need to do a better job of advertising and letting people know that happens. And it may be something also that we could work on and even do better. Kent Police Department diversity. Priority should be placed on recruiting more diverse populations so our staff at the police department better reflect our community. gosh, we agree with that. We've done a lot of work in that area, and we have a lot more work to do in that area. Public safety concerns. The majority of public safety issues expressed by the community were traffic, safety, pedestrians jaywalking, speeding, and running red lights. Another public safety concern is staffing of the police department. Are there enough police departments? There was a perception and belief in our community that we don't have enough police officers. The fact that property crime is high. Quality of life, homeless, and graffiti are some other areas associated with public safety. And then there's community safety. People want to feel safe, but in some areas of town and at some times of the day, specifically at night, some people don't feel safe. Well, we certainly don't want that as a police department, but it certainly is good to know. Key words used to describe community safety include lighting, homeless, drug activity, and gun violence. So when those questions are asked on safety in your community, those were the responses that most concerned people across the board. So there's more, but I just wanted to hit the highlights, and I believe that in the back of the room, Jaylene has the list of the information from the July 21st meeting that I talked about. She has a list of the Kent focus group overview that I just hit the highlights of, but there's much more detail in that, and that's just the highlights. And then we also have a form that is what the Kent Police Department is doing. Many people don't know that we respond to about 95,000 calls for service per year. And so in addition to responding to those 95,000 calls for service, addressing our intelligence-led policing and property crime and violent crime issues, we participate in a list. We sat down and brainstormed one afternoon, so I don't know that it's complete. It's just one time of just sitting down and talking about it. But the list is in the back, and I think it's really important because I'm going to hit a couple of the highlights of this that we're talking about, but you've heard the story twice. Assistant Chief Padilla talked about the situation we had this afternoon up on the East Hill with the person in the domestic violence situation that then armed himself with a knife. And Israel talked about it from a school district perspective. And really, Assistant Chief Padilla talked about it from the perspective of where a drone could have assisted and helped us in that situation. And it certainly could. I want to take just a touch of a different spin on that and talk about the conduct of our police officers and just how proud I am of how they conducted themselves this afternoon, because I did go up to the scene and I tried to stay out of the way. Todd? Ask Commander Durham, he was the incident commander, and we stayed out of the way, didn't we, Todd? I can't tell you how proud I am of our staff and the job that they did. They were put into a situation. The suspect in this case was an African-American male. He had assaulted his girlfriend. He had committed about 3 felonies. He had warrants for his arrest. He had committed some violations. He was threatening the officers when he went in and barricaded himself in the room with a knife. And he said, I have a sword, and I'm going to come out and I'm going to kill every one of you. And I want you to know I'm serious and I mean business, and I'm going to come out and I'm going to kill you. Officer Warmington was one of the first officers that showed up. He pulled out his less lethal weapon, basically a beanbag round weapon, and was one of the front guys on the line. From the station, the guys got shields to help build distance, to help protect themselves, and we immediately called negotiators. We spent time We went, we negotiated, we talked, we worked. He was barricaded in the bathroom. We talked through the wall, talked. Gosh, negotiators talked. But there was no rush at that point because the victim was out of the house. The suspect was contained in that location, and we did not need to push a confrontation at that point to create a deadly force situation. So at a certain point, I think it was about 2 hours into it, we put some spray, some gas underneath the door to try to help stop the suspect, to get him to calm down. I think there was some mental health issues and some substance abuse issues going on. And we still don't know how it occurred to this day, but if you can imagine a tiny bathroom window on a second story apartment, somehow this guy opened the window and got out of that window. This suspect was about 6'2", 250 pounds. And somehow, imagine those bathroom windows, he got himself out of that window on the second floor, climbed up on the roof of the apartment complex. So now he's on the roof of the apartment complex. We have the SWAT team coming. We have the building evacuated. We got reports he could have a gun. We did see him with a knife, but at one point he threw at least one knife out, but we didn't know if he had another knife. We continued to negotiate from the ground. I think we spent a total of 4 hours at that scene to not create a confrontation, not create a deadly force situation, and eventually the suspect gave himself up. And I can't tell you, it inconvenienced the community. 256 was blocked, it impacted the school district, but the professionalism, the forethought to keep everybody in our community safe, treat everybody with respect, and be absolute professionals by the staff of the Kent Police Department was just magnified 1,000 times by how our staff conducted themselves this afternoon. And I've said how proud I am, and everybody in this room should be proud of the work that many of those officers did today. It illustrates the work that's being done. So I wanted to highlight, and you'll get this forum, but I want to highlight a little bit of the things that we're doing. We've talked about fair and impartial policing, implicit bias training. Every one of our staff got that. That's now taught to every recruit in the academy, at the police academy in the state of Washington. Blue courage training, talking about policing is a noble profession and do the right things for the right reasons, and ethics. Crisis intervention, I just told the story about the crisis intervention training at work that happened just this afternoon. Diversity training. Command level liaisons with different members of the diverse community where we get out and work and do stuff. Our work with kids, my goodness, our cops in schools, daytime officers go to elementary schools in the city of Kent at least 3 times a week, interact with the kids, eat lunch with them. I've got police officers that are teaching math class and reading class during certain class periods for different classrooms in our community. It's in the elementary schools. It's amazing. Our school resource officers and school liaison commander that works directly with Mr. Villa and the school district. Incredible. Great program. Gang resistance, education and training. Every 5th grader in the Kent School District gets a 7-week program presented by police officers from our department on making good decisions. And then finally, the police science class at Kent Meridian High School. Since 2008, I believe, 2007, 2008, we've been teaching a police science class at Kent Meridian High School. So a lot of interaction. We have coffee with a chief, where a lot of the same people here tonight go to different restaurants throughout the city and meet and have coffee quarterly community meetings where we get together. For the last 5 years, we've been meeting quarterly like this, talking about different topics, and we could go on and on and on. There's a lot, but you can get a copy of all this out there just to get an idea of the things that we are doing. And we were even surprised at the amount of things that we are doing. I think we need to do a better job. I need to do a better job at helping the community understand exactly what we are doing as a police department and better market our police department in what we do with our community to help build that trust even better. So we're going to be looking at how we can take what we're already doing, take the suggestions that have been provided by the community, come up with a strategic plan, an action plan, and how to put all of that together and really do a better job at telling our story. Because I think the more people that know and understand our story, that we're able to more effectively communicate in our community, the more trust we will generate, the more legitimacy the police will have in our community, and we can impact our community. We can't impact necessarily what happens in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or Texas, or South Carolina, or some of the other places throughout the country, but we can impact what we do here. And I think it's critically important as the police chief and the leadership in our department that we do everything that we possibly can to build trust, respect, and legitimacy in our community. That plan isn't completed yet, though. We're still in the processing of what we've heard. So the purpose of this was to report back to you what we've heard, what we've learned through focus groups, and our next step is to come up with some specific concrete plans in how we are going to move forward. And just because we've had a big community meeting and we've done a big focus group doesn't mean we're done. We need to continue the conversation, but I think it's important that we reported back to you so far with what we've heard, and then we can continue forward. So that's what I have on that topic. Assistant Chief Padilla, did you have some questions?
We do, Chief.
Hold on one sec.
The children were afraid of multiple policing. Did they come up with a reason?
The question was, the children that were afraid of the multiple policemen, did they come up? I believe, and Sarah might need to help me on this, I believe my understanding was their perception of safety was different. So if the kids saw a lot of police officers, their perception was something bad was happening in the area. Where when some of the business leaders and some of the community groups saw more police around, they felt better and safer, that everything was safe and they were going to be okay. So the distinction is, oh, there's a lot of police here, something bad is happening, or something is really dangerous here. That's the difference. Was I clear on that?
It's just the individual's perception of what was going on in the area.
Correct. Or the difference between younger people in our community, younger generation, and older generations, I think is really what that is. Ready for some questions, Chief? Okay. So the first question, when will we have officers on board to satisfy the current officer shortfall? Right now, we're authorized 150 police officers, and we have steadily received support from the city council, from the mayor, to continue to grow our police department. I believe that we need about 160 police officers to do a good job for our community. It's budget time, and we have requested, the mayor has requested, and I've heard a lot of support, but nothing's done till it's done, so I'm not crossing any lines, council, but I believe that there's a lot of council support to bring on additional police officers. A reality is this: the police department is one piece of a larger team of our city, and our city has a certain budget that they have to work within. So the police department has received enormous support from our mayor, from our city council, but you can't get there overnight. We need to build, and for the last several years, we have steadily built our staffing levels, and we're continuing to build. We've got an incredible recruiting team, but I can tell you the candidate pool is pretty shallow. I'm being honest. We are not getting the quality of candidates and the number of candidates right now that we historically have gotten in the police department. There were times when there would be 800 to 1,000 candidates applying for police officer, and now there's times when we're only seeing 20 or 30 coming through in an oral board. And we went through a phase when it came to the chief's interview with myself and the assistant chiefs that I think we offered 2 jobs to about 10 or 12 people that we saw. We refused to lower the standards in the Kent Police Department, and unless you can pass the background and meet the high standards and qualities that we demand in the police department, we're not going to hire you. It means we go through a lot of people. It means we don't get staffed up as quickly as we would like. But there's consensus amongst our entire staff, from the new hire, through the sergeants, through the command staff, to myself, through the council, the mayor's office. We are going to demand the best quality, and we're not going to settle for anything less than that. And we would rather work with a few shorter officers and get there in time than settle for not having the best. So we're authorized 150. Our goal, our hope, our belief is to get to about 160. We've steadily grown over the last several years, and I think if you do the math, it'll be a few more years and we're going to get there. Yes, sir.
Is that 150 uniform officers?
Correct. Yeah, 150 commissioned. Oh, no, that includes detectives. Anybody that is a commissioned police officer. The other, we have about 50 more personnel that are civilian personnel that work in the jail, evidence, records, because you also have to be careful. You can't grow too fast and too much in uniformed commissioned officers and not have the support to help them be effective and successful in their jobs. So just like we have to be consistent with the rest of the city, within the police department, we have to be consistent within our department, not grow one area too much over the other.
All right, Chief, the next question is about our ability to deal with a person who haven't actually committed a crime. What can our officers do? What are they able to do?
Do you want me to answer these? I mean, I can, but these guys give me a bad time about talking too much. But Marvin, you're not supposed to shake your head, yes? Our bicycle officers are our primary team that focus on working with the mentally ill before they commit a crime or when they're homeless. And really their focus is not to come up and make an arrest. It's to work with them, get them into social services, and help them get on their feet and get the medical attention that they need and the social service attention and help that they need.
But, can I elaborate on that? Sure. What, by you saying that your focus is to help them get the help that they need, what, case in point, I had a neighbor last week that he's got mental health issues. He's a diagnosed schizophrenic, and he's off his medication. And I called the cops on Wednesday to come out because he was breaking glass and acting erratic. And they said that there was nothing that they could do unless he hurt himself, or if he was like if he looked like he was had cut himself, or was hadn't washed. They said if he hadn't taken a shower. And then they left, and they didn't really give me any options for what to do beyond that if something were to happen, just to call back. And then Friday morning, he had continued to throw stuff out of his house. His backyard was full of everything that was inside of his house. And so we called the cops, and they still said that they couldn't take him to the hospital. He lives alone. He's 45, white male, history of violence, and that I know of. I've known him for 10 years. And they still left and just left him there. And it wasn't until the evening that he had attacked his uncle that they were able to get him into the hospital. And I was just I felt really helpless as to what I could do to get him some help, because he didn't have anybody to advocate for him. And in that same breath, they had said I should call the King County Mental Health Crisis Line, which I did, and the advocate on the phone told me that I really needed to call the cops and have you guys pick him up. And I said, well, I've been trying to do that since Wednesday, and I just went round and round. They said that there's nothing that you guys could do until a crime had been committed. And I just wanted to know if that was true, and if that is true, where can you tell me to go to try to make some noise to get better, I guess, laws or something?
Yeah, you brought up a lot of different issues in that area. We as police officers, by law, can only involuntarily commit somebody, and that's what you were describing, if they pose an imminent threat to themselves or others. So the patrol officer responding to an initial call can respond, they can talk to the person, they can evaluate the situation, but unless they determine that that person is an imminent threat to themselves or others, by law, we have no authority to force them or mandate them to go to the hospital or to get the help that they need. When I say we try to reach out to the people who are mentally ill and who are having problems, is operating within the law. We go out and we have, especially our bicycle unit, really focuses on trying to build relationships. So this doesn't happen overnight. And often when someone's having an attack, as you kind of has described, that's not generally when they're in their right mind, so to speak, to make the decision to voluntarily go in and get help. So many of our officers are just as frustrated as you are, but we have to operate within the laws of the state of Washington. And in reality, what you've described is a failure of the mental health system. And really, one of the issues is the police department becomes the recipient of failed systems in our society, and the police are expected to solve the homeless issue, the mental health issue, many of these other social programs that have failed in all other areas. The last resort is the police, and we have to follow the rules and guidelines that we are given.
I just wanted to just address the school piece. Again, I think something that can be done there is we work very closely with our police, our SROs, our police departments. So in that case, you can rest assured that we know this, and we are communicating. It doesn't solve the problem, but it keeps our kids safe, because now what we have is more eyes on what's going on, particularly because of our kids. But I wanted to address that, how important it is for law enforcement to communicate and over-communicate what's happening around our schools, whether it be someone with mentally ill or other, it doesn't matter. It could be any something that looks different out there in this case, then we can all work together. It's the community's responsibility to be able to keep each other safe.
And Chief, real quick to piggyback on that with her, I deal with I'm a chaplain, so I deal with different people that work with that, but I think it's very important to point out this happens all over. It's not, for her, it's a one-time thing, but in the community, we see this every day of this going on. But one of the most important things to remember is, even when the crisis team goes out there, most of the time, nothing was going to change. They would calm him down, they leave, and he'd be right back to doing what he was doing. It's his stuff, so that's why it's nothing wrong, because he can smash his stuff up all he wants. But the other part that's tough about this is dealing with the homeless population that we do work with. We do go in and we do have places that they can go to. They choose not to go. He chooses not to go, and that's part of what's tough is you can't make them go. They are the ones that choose not to go when the resources are there. So to answer her question, you do what you're doing. Keep an eye on there and just, call the crisis line when you can, but it happens every day. I hate to say that.
Councilperson Fincher.
I was just going to say next year there is only one unit right now. They are going to add a second unit next year, but still that's to cover the entire county. So if they're busy on one call, it's going to still take a while. And like he said, they can refuse to go.
Okay, Raf, do we have it? Oh, sorry.
We do, Chief.
Hold on one second.
Sorry. I had a brother that passed away, and he was paranoid schizophrenia, so as well as an addict. And it was always the streets, because he never felt safe with anybody else other than his family. But we had to put up that wall, and he eventually became homeless and just went through the cycles of the prison system, because it was unsafe for him to be home, but it was also unsafe for him out in the community. And we actually liked it when he was locked up. And we liked it when our other family members, my other brother was locked up, because everybody was safe. We were safe on the home front. He was safe. He was getting meals. He was getting beds. He was getting services within inside the jail. So that's how we solved it, was like, keep him in, like, don't let him out. But I know that that's hard for families, and I know that that's really hard to like draw that hard line, but that was better than the streets, or better than him doing drugs, or better than him losing his mind. Just throwing that out there.
And we need to get on to the next story, but you bring up a point that is a huge concern, and that is the biggest mental health facility is jails, and that is wrong. Mentally ill people need to get help. They don't need to be sitting in a jail. And I realize your situation was unique, but the jails are used, once again, the police department becomes the end line of a failed system that we're now warehousing them in jails because there isn't enough funding for them to be in a hospital or to get the treatment that they need. So, great. Raf.
This one's really complicated, Chief, so I'll take this one. The question is parking legal in a cul-de-sac? And the answer is yes. All of the same restrictions apply. You can't be in front of a driveway or a mailbox or blocking. But yes, and you must be facing the direction of travel. So that's the answer to that one. That was tough. That's why I took that one.
Thank you.
And then the last one, I'll start, and Chief, if you want to add on, there's a great question, and that is, what are we doing to get more people to these meetings? Obviously, we haven't completely figured that out. We're trying everything from social media to email listings to getting out in every form that we can, to include maybe looking at why and how we're having this meeting. Is there another way to do that? We're looking, so if you have suggestions, we'll definitely take them. And it's been hit and miss. We've had meetings where there's 80 people, and then we've had meetings where there's 20 or less. So, but don't let that diminish your enthusiasm. We're glad that you're here, and we're glad that you took the time out of your night to come and listen to what we had to say.
It's interesting, great question. I had that conversation a little earlier tonight, and one of the answers was, depends on what's happening in the community and what's happening across the country. If people are excited about something and they want to be heard, they're going to show up and be heard. If things are kind of okay or there's really not any big deal or big issues going on, there are a few people here tonight, and there are a few people that have left already that have had a long week and have had a long day, and unless there's something that really they feel in their heart, they want to be home with their family and continue on with their week. And that's some of the feedback that we've gotten also. When there were controversial police shootings and there were police officers being shot as a result of that and being ambushed, we got 200 plus people out to the meeting. There is not a lot going on right now. Presidential race, but we're not going to talk about that. But as far as a police community forum, so I think that's another piece of that. Yes, sir.
Was there a new station going to open up on East Hill?
Yes, there is. A new station is going to be opening up on the East Hill. It's built, it's put together. We're getting the last fine tuning of getting the computers in and getting the computers hooked up. And I believe within, I set a deadline of November 1st, and I was assured that we would be in there before November 1st. It's just, we're really, really close. It's up in the intersection area of 256th and 104th, across from Kent Meridian High School, by the McDonald's, right in the middle of where there's a lot of criminal activity. That's probably the biggest hotspot in the entire city for crime and criminal activity. So it makes sense from a police community policing issue. It makes a lot of sense to have the police where a lot of the crime is occurring.
Is that why you have a cop at the Fred Meyer on Pack Highway?
Well, the Fred Meyer in that case hired police officers that are off duty, that aren't even on regular duty. They hired them to be there and act as security because they were losing so much from theft.
Oh, so Fred Meyer actually pays for that?
Fred Meyer pays for the officer to go there and do nothing but provide security and a presence to keep people safe and try to prevent theft.
They remodeled what they lose under
Yeah.
control.
Yep. Libby.
What's going on with some of the homeless camps on East Hill? I know we have a couple of them in the Panther Lake area. Is that something that you guys are addressing, going and trying to get those cleaned up, or are you letting them just sort of be there?
When a homeless camp, when our bicycle officers come across to homeless camp, or somebody calls in and notifies us of specific homeless camps, we will go to the area, we'll check it out. Primarily, they're assigned to our bicycle unit, and we post them, give people 24 hours notice that we are going to move the camp, give them an opportunity to move out, and if they don't, we then utilize our jail staff and our city dump truck or vehicles, and we clean them up and move them out, primarily with our jail corrections staff.
So people need to continue to call if people keep going back there?
Correct.
Okay.
We can't do anything unless we know about it. We work with them and try to get them services, but somebody said earlier, I can tell you there are a lot of people that we offer a lot of services to that are homeless that are not interested in our help or anybody else's help that we've made available to them. Thank you all very much for being here tonight.